All right. Hello, everyone. This is the Career Fair. My name is Sam Hill, also known as the Career Change Guru. Today, our guest is Tyshawn Griggs. Say hello, Ty.
How you doing? How's everybody doing out there?
So today, we're going to talk to Ty, and Ty is actually an engineer for GM. And so we're going to understand what the job is like, what it entails, and also just his journey, how he actually got the role and the opportunity. So here we go. So Ty, tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
Born here in Buffalo, New York. Born and raised Kensington Bailey area. Grew up going through all my schooling here, from elementary through high school. I went to Seneca Vocational. That's kind of where I got the idea in the field to want to get into engineering. Took CAD/CAM robotics kind of as my major. That got heavily involved in the CNC machines, heavily involved in the drafting, and just basically got very interested in it. So going into college, went to the University of Buffalo. I knew I wanted some kind of technical career. So my first thought was to go into architecture because I really enjoyed drafting. But just the materials and cost of architecture school was just so much more. So I decided to get into mechanical engineering program at University of Buffalo. And after 4 years of that, found my way into General Motors.
Yeah, if you don't mind, you already lost me. You were talking about some things that I don't even understand. And so Let's go back. So First, let's go back to what grammar schools did you go to?
Grammar school, went to St. Aloysius.
Okay.
The private route for a grammar school. High school, again, I went to Seneca Vocational.
So let's stay there. So I think you said at Seneca, you started getting into CAD and drafting.
Right.
So explain that for folks that have no idea what that is.
Computer-aided drafting, basically old school blueprinting. Instead of doing it pencil and paper, you're basically drawing, building models all in the computer world. So AutoCAD, heavily used AutoCAD. And then the CNC portion of that, computer numerical control machining, basically writing G codes and M codes to take what you're drawing, any machine components, and turn that into an actual component through your CNC, either mills, lathes, things like that. So heavily got involved in that at the high school level. And that's
so what you're saying is that on CAD, you're actually drawing whatever that your vision is, or you're drawing the product, and then there's this other.
Yep, you take that drawing, you can render it into 3D, and then take that and use it to write G code or CNC code for manufacturing that into actual product. So
okay. Now that was just in high school, right?
That was just high school, yeah. Just playing around with that high school.
So when
that's basically what I'm sorry. That's basically what the bulk of my career is now. Is I'm a manufacturing engineer, execution engineer, and that same concept still applies today from high school to now. Heavily involved in that kind of work now. So.
Okay. So we'll get there, but it's kind of, you don't hear people say what they learned in high school actually transfers over into what they do in their 9 to 5. So yeah. That's good. So that's one of the benefits of kind of like a trade, right? Having a trade.
Right. Having a trade. I know they're kind of few and far between now, but vocational schools, very big proponent of those. I know this area at a time had several vocational schools, and I know that's kind of dwindling now, but I'd highly recommend and highly tell young kids to try to get ideas on what they want to do at a young age, high school age, versus waiting till they start college to try to figure it out, So.
Right. So now as you, so you're graduating. So when you graduated from Seneca, did you have an idea where you wanted to go? Did you know you wanted to be an engineer?
It was either engineering or architecture. Like I said, the cost to get into the whole architecture side was so extreme at the time. Just a lot more materials had to be purchased up front when you entered into the programs at UB. So I chose to go the mechanical engineering route. Just again, and I think too, looking at my future, like it just panned out to be more versatile on the whole manufacturing engineering, mechanical engineering. A lot more vast than just architecture in my mind at the time it was.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. And so talk about those college years. Was it difficult? You know, a lot of times, at least for me, when I think about engineering, it's just like a lot of work. So I'm assuming that's science and math. So what was the workload like?
Yeah, a lot of science and math. My struggle was chemistry. I love the sciences. I loved physics. I loved, thermodynamics, things like that. But I could never wrap my head around chemistry. So that was definitely a struggle. I would say my first 2 years of chemistry. But it's a challenge, right? You want the outcome, so you work hard, you buckle down, you study extra hard, you go to office. I didn't let that deter me from going further. The first 2 years, that was the only class I really struggled with, and I actually sat down with the dean of the chemistry department at the time, and I always think back to this. She told me at the time that I would never be an engineer because I didn't, I was struggling with chemistry, and I chose that. I took that as a challenge, and I was like, I'm gonna do well at this. I'm gonna pass my first few years of chemistry, and I did, and it all panned out, and I'm an engineer now. So it definitely, I would say too, young people, don't let one person telling you you're not what you can't do dissuade you from being what you want to be. So.
Yeah. No, great. So let's talk about now what you do today, right? So what is your current title? What is your scope? What are you responsible for? And then just kind of give us the history of how you got there.
My current role today, I'm an execution engineer with General Motors. I'm responsible for basically taking an empty plant floor. So just imagine a warehouse cement floor and purchasing and basically using our engineering processes and specifications to purchase equipment to basically manufacture engine components. So at the plant I work at, we make full engines, so heavy duty engines. And we started from components, blocks, heads, cranks. So I purchased all that. I'm solely responsible for purchasing the equipment in those departments to help manufacture these components from raw forgings or castings into finished products, which are then delivered to our assembly line, and they get built into full engines at that point. And then those engines are delivered to our vehicle plants. And at those vehicle plants, they are fully assembled in the trucks, cars, and all the vehicles out on the road today. So
call out some of those vehicles so people understand
right now,
the engines that are coming out of Buffalo.
Heavy duty, so the 2500 heavy duty Chevy Silverados and the 2500 heavy duty GMC Sierras. So all the heavy duty trucks. I've also worked on our aluminum side, which is mostly the Gen 5, which has the aluminum blocks, and those go into your standard 1500 Silverados, Camaros, and also there's also Corvette applications out there. So.
Okay. Wow. So how did you, I know it's a progression, right? And so right now that sounds like a lot of responsibility impacting a lot of employees. And so talk to us what that journey's been like. So since college, how many years have you been with GM? And then, what are some of the other jobs or roles you had to take to get to where you are today?
Started with GM in 2003. So I've been there roughly 17 years and some change now. So it's been a long journey. And within General Motors, manufacturing, there's so many different roles, and I've pretty much done them all within our four walls. On the production side, I've been a production supervisor. I've been a shift leader, managing the manufacturing of components and the people side of the business. But a big part of my career has been spent mostly on the technical side, either being in manufacturing engineering or process engineering, ensuring that, we manufacture components and parts safely, cost effectively, and just with the utmost quality. So that is the big focus at GM, and then just working at those jobs. So again, starting out 2003, project managing an install of a block line, a cylinder block line, then moving into process engineering and heads, and basically making process improvements and trying to make ways to make things safer and improve our throughput. So a lot of initiatives I was working on would help do those once we're already in production, which differs kind of from what I do now, where I'm purchasing everything up front and basically based on our specifications, bringing the equipment in. But then when the equipment gets in the plant, if it's not making its rated cycle time or meeting its rated jobs per hour, then we go further and start, putting other measures in place to make improvements.
Okay. All right, Ty. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit more about what might have been the most challenging role so far at GM.
I would say one of my more challenging roles, and it's kind of looked at everybody as a challenge, is being on the people side of the business and being like I call it a production group leader. That job entails dealing with just, so many different personalities and trying to drive them all towards a common goal or focus, which is, getting parts, getting engines out of our doors. So that, I would say that's probably been one of the most challenging roles I've had. You know, Again, you're dealing with so many different personalities, having teams of people from anywhere is, I think the fewest I've had has been 12 people up to 20 people on one team. And again, trying to get everybody to, push towards the same goal and, at the same time, ensure that we're doing things safely with quality and at cost. So that's probably one of the toughest jobs I've had, or
Okay.
toughest.
How'd you get over the hump? Because, based on what you've shared, you've always grown and you keep getting these new opportunities. But what has worked for you whenever managing and leading people?
Just as far as what has worked for me always has been listening. I see so many people struggle at that role because, there's so many different things to pay attention to at any given time, but you got to let people know that you hear them and that you're listening to what their issues are and their concerns, prioritizing them, because sometimes you get things that it may be a big deal to this person but not to another person. So you always want to at least show that you're listening and try to put their initiatives and what they want you to get done or achieve brought to the forefront and get them done. Like, so sometimes it's small tasks, things like, oh, the ice machine is not working today, things like that could really hurt your career if you don't address them, because if you're not going to address something small like that, then you're not going to address a bigger issue. So it's just always showing people that you listen to their concerns and their needs, and following through and getting them addressed is the biggest thing. That's how I got over the hump. I always try, within reason, always try to address their issues, and always, again, keep our focus on manufacturing to the forefront and try to get over those humps. So.
Okay, totally makes sense. Now, what about, now that might have been the most challenging role, really having the people side of the business, but has there been any roles that you've had to take that may not have been something that you wanted to do, but you had to do it anyway to get to the next step? And I ask that question because I think, for our audience, our students watching, they need to understand, to get where they need to go, that
Right.
sometimes you got to take the crappy assignment, or do the hard assignment to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, and I would say again, I graduated degree engineer from UB. I never had a vision of being a production supervisor, but I had to take those roles, and often take those roles on off shifts. So meaning, you're on third shift or you're on second shift, missing your summer, because, we run around the clock. And
Talk about those shifts really quick, Ty. What is the second shift, third shift? What
second
are those
shift is
hours?
roughly 3 to 11. Third shift is 11 to 7 in the morning. So you're working overnight. And those shifts could be grueling on the body, grueling on the social life. But it's I look at everything as a challenge, and I didn't get to where I'm at now by just being one of those guys that says, oh, I can only work first shift. And sometimes it's a little more challenging on those shifts because you don't have the same amount of resources that you would have on, say, a first shift. So you may not have the same engineering support. You may not have the same quality support. You may not have, there's no executives in the building at those times. So, there's things where, minor things like, somebody gets hurt, or you're basically figuring those things out. And I think that's kind of what helped me in my career now. You figure out how to get things done because you didn't have that support. So you figure it out really fast, actually. So
Yeah.
That's what I say is like, some people come in the door and their thing is, oh, I went to school for 4 years to be an engineer, and I'm not doing anything else. But it helps you understand all aspects of the business. If you can be the customer and then go back and be the actual engineer, you understand now as an engineer how I need to help my customer because you were the customer. So I would say, not something I ever thought I'd be doing, but it definitely has helped my career and understanding the way the business works, So
Yeah. Now because I know your resume, I also know you went back to school. So you got your 4-year engineering degree.
Yep.
It was already challenging. And at some point you actually went back to school for
I
your
went,
master's.
about 3 years in working at General Motors. Actually, while I was on second shift, I decided, I want to grow my career. I want to, get more versed in leadership and understand it from a textbook standpoint. So I decided to go back and get my MBA from a Dye College here in Buffalo. I did their accelerated learning program, which involved, was it 1 or 2 nights a week, I believe, going to their campus and taking classes and, working as a cohort to get projects done at the same time while working a full-time job. So definitely a challenge, but it has paid off, especially, like I said, with the understanding leadership roles and responsibilities, and all those things. I said struggling on the people side, giving you the skill set and the know-how, like learning from again a textbook standpoint, what's necessary. So
Yeah. I believe you and I took the same program.
right.
And so I think for me, and I'll just share, is that I actually went back to school so that someone could never use education as a reason for me not getting the higher role. Right. So I think that I could have done well still in my career. However, showing that I had the MBA, or if MBA was a requirement, I wanted to ensure that I already had that in my back pocket, so no one could give me could stop me.
Right. It never hurts, so it has only done good things for my career. It has no negatives to it. So, from a personal standpoint, I learned a lot through that program, the business side, leadership, finance, things like that. And then applying that to what I do today, budgeting and doing cost analysis. And, so it all, if it doesn't directly help you in your career, the knowledge and the know-how will help you do certain aspects of your job. So I definitely always, recommend, growing your education, growing your knowledge base of, what you're interested in. So.
Right. So from your perspective, where do you think the engineering field is going? And even if you want to even talk about the different types of engineering that is out there, so there's mechanical, electrical, I think even chemical, and so on and so forth. But whether speak to that, but even also where's the business going or the industry going?
As far as engineering, again, like you said, there's so many different realms within. You have industrial, chemical, mechanical, electrical, controls, environmental. And I see, I can always speak from a mechanical aspect or a manufacturing engineering standpoint, but there's always new manufacturing processes that you have to pick up because what was done 20 years ago. We've made engines for years certain ways, or made engines for years using certain manufacturing processes that are now obsolete. Some of them may not have been safe. So you're always, seeing what's the next latest and greatest kind of technology out there. And as far as the whole automotive industry, I know there's a big push for electrification. And from what I see going forward, GM and other car companies, is that there's going to be a big push to manufacture um, electric vehicles soon. So that brings a whole nother ball game into these manufacturing facilities where you're dealing with CNC machines and things like that, where now you're going to have just a heavier component based, just the different components altogether, electric motors and no longer combustion engines, things like that. So the technology is ever changing, and you always want to stay abreast of what the next thing is, right? So when I started working for General Motors, the big thing at the time was inline transfer machining. We then went heavy into CNC cell manufacturing, and I raised my hand early on and said, hey, I want to go work over in a different department because they have the newer technology. So I did that early in my career. I was like, I don't want to be stuck knowing this these old inline machines and these old controls logic that just was kind of it was kind of going to probably within 4 or 5 years. After me starting to work there, we switched over heavily. Everything was CNC machines, or CNC cell manufacturing, and we got rid of a lot of the inline transfer machinery. So
Okay. So you just mentioned raising your hand, right? And so talk to the young people out there the importance of raising your hand, and even just stepping up and stepping into the unknown, especially if you have goals and aspirations.
Yeah, if you have goals and aspirations, you have to take those opportunities when you're in your leaders, face to faces, informal, formal sit downs, and let your goals be known. I mean, if you don't want somebody to assume what your career path is going to be, right? You want to kind of have the keys and take over the wheel. So I would definitely say, like at GM, we do a great job at having at least 3 periods throughout the year where we can sit down with our management and let them know how we're progressing in certain roles and what our next goals are. And not only do I do that with my direct leaders, as I have contact or interact with other leaders within the business, I let them know and understand like what my interests are, and again, it can be formal, it can be informal, but just in passing, hey, I noticed your job isn't doing great at this, I can help you with that. Or just always speak up for yourself, because you don't want somebody to determine what your fate may be. And then as a leader, being in a leadership role where I've had salaried individuals working with me, I appreciate it more knowing what my staff wanted firsthand than to try to put them in the roles that they didn't like or didn't aspire to be in. So that always helps when you're trying to figure out what to do with people. As far as on the leadership side, where does everybody fit in the puzzle? And if you don't speak up, people don't know where you fit, or what. Okay, you may fit currently in this position, but what do you want to do 5 years from now? And I always try to keep my mentality is 3 years. Every 3 years, I want to change up what I'm doing. Challenge myself.
Right. So on that point, what's next? What's the target for you?
It all depends. Right now, currently, we've purchased several new machine lines within our facility. I've never strayed away from looking outside of our 4 walls at the current facility I'm at, but maybe an assignment potentially in the Michigan area where there's a little more opportunities. And again, the whole electrification thing is going, so I'd like to kind of get my foot in the door with some of that in the manufacturing side, manufacturing engineering side. So.
Okay. What type of, so when you think about, having goals and aspirations, and like you said, that the technology is always changing and they want to go electrical. Now your background is mechanical, right? So, what type of, how do you determine when to make a jump, or what type of research are you doing to kind of get ready for that shift, for that move?
There's certain like manufacturing engineering trade magazines and things like that. I always try to get updates on and try to see what's on the forefront. The role I'm in now, I kind of am tied to a central manufacturing engineering role. So I'm actually work out of Michigan. So my colleagues and counterparts that are in Detroit, I'm always picking their brains and understanding what's the next big thing coming, what's the next technology we need to start understanding how it works. So just communicating, talking to people, reaching outside of maybe if you're working a large company like I do, you reach outside of the four walls of your facility, talk to people wherever the headquarters are and say, hey, what's coming on the forefront? And, what does it entail that you have to be, knowledgeable of? So, in the whole electrification side of things, you're still going to have your core manufacturing principles, if it's machining components, all the same knowledge applies. It's just, we assemble. So assemble of components or assembly of full uh, drivetrains and things like that is always going to be, the process of assembly is going to be the same, but just the components are going to be different. So that's the way I look. So.
Okay. Now, what about, I know you talked about reaching out to your peers and others and from different cities and at different plants, but what about mentorship? Have you been a mentee to anyone? Like, do you have some mentors out there, and if so, how have they helped?
Early on in my career, I did have a mentor out of Michigan. I was, General Motors, a company large like that, has a lot of affinity groups. So I was part of the G-Man, General Motors African Ancestry Network. And through that, I was able to get access to, I would say, 8th level and above leaders within the plant who look like me, who basically had the same struggles I had coming through General Motors from my early career, through now. And I've kind of basically tapped in and just, sometimes they have monthly seminars and sometimes you just listen to see, okay, this is how, this person dealt with this situation. And I just take notes. I mean, best thing you can do is in a situation where you have a mentor like that is just listen, take notes. Because if it worked for them, it'd definitely work for you, so.
Yeah. Did you, I think you said listen and take notes, but did you have to drive the relationship or come with the questions and then then listen?
We had formal sit downs,
Okay.
once a month, or actually once a quarter, I think back then. And then at times, if something was bothering me or I needed to get an answer on something, I would just shoot that person an email, say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or how do you figure this out? Or, have you ever experienced this? So don't wait till those formal opportunities. Also, if they're a good mentor, they should have their doors always open to answer your questions and help you out. And I also have, people I've worked with, I look at as mentors, within the facility I work at now, not part of the G-Man system, but just people that helped train me when I first started. I always shoot things back and forth to them. If I need a better understanding of the system or how things work, I tap into them very regularly. I mean, don't ever be afraid to ask questions. I mean, the worst you can do is get a no, right? So that's the way I look at things.
Okay. So what about international experience? I know that, a lot of times when you're reading about getting certain jobs and having well-rounded experiences, have you had any exposure internationally?
Um, in my current role, yeah, I have traveled to Germany um, with General Motors in the current role I'm in as an execution engineer, and
What
just
was what was that like?
going.
How, being in Germany? I mean, how was that
Um,
experience?
it's it's cold, but being from Buffalo, saying that somewhere else is cold was kind of rough. But it's a different kind of cold there. But other than that, it's just different. The way the Germans engineering, they perceive as things that they do engineering wise as being the best of the best, right? Um, so going over there for 2 weeks and learning their culture of manufacturing, being inside their plants and understanding, they basically were building equipment and machinery for us, and making sure they're following our process that we have laid out, and just get part of their culture was very, I would say, um, it was enlightening. We all kind of do the same things, but their set of eyes versus my set of eyes, and how we looked at things, and why they manufacture things the way they do it, and then try and apply some of that stuff to how we do things over here. So it was very much it was a good outlook to have. And you know you know I can say one thing, in our environment as far as manufacturing, it's a lot more stress, I would say, if you have extreme deadlines and things like that. But I, I guess the way the Germans do things, it's like they have their things may be stressful, but you don't see it on their faces. So that's one thing I learned, is like, um, don't let these things stress you out. This is what we do. This is how we do things. So it's just, I've learned to kind of relax, but still keep the goals in front of me, but without getting so caught up in the stresses of things. That's one thing I picked up from my couple weeks in Germany over there, is like, even though they had tough deadlines, you never know it, because they were common, a lot more common, a lot more relaxed than I see some of my counterparts here, doing. So
Yeah, you hear about that, here on the in the States. We are a little bit more high stress than
right,
in some of these other countries. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So Tyshawn, as we wrap up, what advice would you give high schoolers, or what advice would you have given yourself, several years ago? What is it what's those key learnings over these last 20 years that you would like to give the up and comers?
I would say the first thing is, you know, try to get an idea, whatever it is you're doing now, what you like to do, and how you can make money or make a career out of it, right? So don't ever take a job because you need to take a job. Take a job because it's something you want to do. I would say that would be the first thing. I say the second thing would be network. Um, through my time in high school and college, I've always had to have jobs. I've always had to work, which kind of, on the social side of things, getting involved in groups like NESB, getting involved in groups like Society of Automotive Engineering. Um, I was a member, but I didn't fully uh, get the experience because I've had to have jobs. But my thing would be, get heavily involved in those groups and organizations in college. Network as much as you can with people who have like interests. In college, I tied in with a couple of buddies of mine, and we still talk to this day. And we're kind of all in manufacturing engineering roles, and we always feed ideas back and forth with each other, and how we can do things better. But just that networking, it goes a long way, I would say, for sure, networking. And then the third thing I would say would be, just challenge yourself. Never get complacent, never settle, never get settled in where you're at, because either the industry will pass you by, or you'll become extremely dissatisfied with what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So you always want to challenge yourself, you know, make those hurdles get higher and higher, and keep jumping over them. So that's I would say my keys to success, or my keys to um, things I would do in my life that have helped me. Networking, you know, getting a good idea of what you want to do. You know, your career should be fun to you. So you should wake up every morning and enjoy what you do. You wake up before the alarm clock, and you're like thinking about what do you have to do at work, and how you can solve this problem before you even get there. So that's fun to me, so, and I'm not saying I think about my job 100% of the time, but it all helps when you love what you're doing versus a job in what you don't like to do. So, I've worked those jobs before, so that's my keys.
No, and thank you. And it makes total sense that you wanna kind of understand what your aspirations are all about. What's
Yeah,
the dream job for you, right?
yeah,
And then go through the process of figuring that out.
you
And then
know,
from there, you want to network, right? And then you
yeah,
want to challenge yourself, keep pushing. So that totally makes sense.
and in high school, it's not unheard of for companies to take on a 1 day a week intern when you're in high school. We used to do that at Seneca, and that kind of opened my eyes up. Also in high school, there's a lot of companies that want to harbor that next generation of workforce. So, you know, there's no harm in calling these companies up and asking this, maybe if you're parts of groups like Beam, or I think it's Building Engineering Awareness in Minorities. They help get you in the doors of some of these companies and see what you might be interested in.
Yeah.
Uh, so always, again, network, get involved in as many groups as you can out there that kind of foster what your interests are in. So
Right. Now, does General Motors do anything like that locally?
um, locally, it's a little different now with COVID and everything going on, but we were big proponents and we worked well in a lot of schools with the World in Motion program. Um, I know when I was coming up, Beam was really big, and we would, get involved with engineers from GM. So I believe a lot of those programs are still out there. It's just may have to wait a year or so till we get through this pandemic to see what's out there.
All right, great, great. So Ty, thank you for your time. We really,
Thank
truly
you.
appreciate it. And so, the Canisius team may knock on your door. Who knows? Once we get through the pandemic, because it would be great, for the students to actually come and check out the facility and understand where the world of manufacturing and engineering could take them. So
Yeah.
again, we really appreciate your expertise and your time today.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank
All right.
you.
All right. Have a good one.